Hi, my name is Danielle Binks. I am an author of middle grade and young adult literature. I'm also a literary agent. The Monster of Her Age is a contemporary YA novel set entirely in Hobart, and it deals with a fictional family of thespians called the Lovingers, and in particular one of their daughters, Ellie, who appeared in an indie horror movie as a child actor, where she played the monster of said indie horror movie. She didn't have a great experience on the film set, and now she's a 17-year-old returning home to Hobart for the first time to, in particular, reconcile with her grandmother who's dying, who is kind of the family matriarch of this family of thespians and the person who pushed Ellie into the limelight. And they've got a little bit to reconcile with, but while she's in Hobart, she comes across a feminist horror film club, and one girl from the horror film club in particular, Ria, who makes her reevaluate her role in Australian horror, in the Australian art industry, in the film industry, and in her own life as well. So I always tout it as a young adult novel for fans of The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. If you want a bit of made-up film history and queer romance, this is the book for you. Yeah, young adults. From about 16 plus, I would say. 15 to 16 plus. But I think also adult readers would probably enjoy it. I always think a good book is a good book is a good book. And it doesn't really matter if it was meant for children or young adults. Or, I quite enjoy picture books as well. There are some picture books that have moved me to tears. So I just think that a good book is a good book and can be read by anyone and everyone. Hachette. It's Lothian children's books, which is the imprint of Hachette. But yes, Hachette Books Australia. I have written, my debut book was a middle grade book, The Year the Maps Changed, which now has a little bit of sparkle on it. It was very happily shortlisted for the Prime Minister's Literary Awards, and it was a CBCA notable book. So very proud of this one. But this one is also contemporary, but it's set on the Mornington Peninsula where I grew up, and it's set in 1999 for a very specific reason. It's not just because I'm a 90s child and really wanted to write about lip smackers. The reason being that was the year of something called Operation Safe Haven, which was the Kosovo War, when Australia committed to their largest ever humanitarian exercise, which it still is, when thousands of Kosovar Albanian refugees were brought over to Australia and housed at various safe havens around the country, one of which was the Point Nepean quarantine station. And that's what I've written about, but it's also about very tricky family transitions and big feels, and it's kind of a lot of my family's in there a little bit. And a lot of me is in here because in 1999, I was the same age as my protagonist, Fred, 11 going on 12. And I lived through the Kosovo refugees coming in Operation Safe Haven. So this one's kind of the book of my heart, being my debut as well. Also Hachette, Lothian children's books. I'm very committed to Hachette, but it is also coming out in North America in October with Quill Tree Books, which is an imprint of HarperCollins over there. And they're keeping the Australian setting. They're keeping it all Australian, which I was really quite surprised by, but very happy with, because they said that they could see a lot of the way that America now treats their refugees and asylum seekers. They could see a lot of similarities with where Australia started from with The Year the Maps Changed as well, because we basically began our refugee and asylum seeker policy through Operation Safe Haven and the John Howard era government policies around asylum seekers being offered temporary asylum, not permanent residency. So I'm very happy that America is keeping the Australian setting to discuss that. And we've recently also sold Polish translation rights, because I was told there's a lot of stuff happening in Eastern Europe right now, and they kind of want to go back to reflecting in the 90s and that period of unrest to understand where they got to now. So I'm going to have a Polish publisher as well. Please don't ask me for their name because I cannot pronounce it yet. I need to have somebody from the Polish publisher Zoom call with me and say, this is your publisher. So I'm not yet quite brave enough to mispronounce that in case they want to roll back the whole deal. I wish, but I'm an author, I'm a literary agent with Jacinta de Marze Management, and now I also teach writing at RMIT in their professional writing and editing course. So I now have 3 hats. I'm author, agent, and lecturer, teacher. It feels very weird for me to include teacher because I came through the RMIT professional writing editing as a student many moons ago, and now I'm a teacher. there in the same course. And I just had a real out-of-body experience just yesterday where I was teaching my class of writing fiction first-year students. And I did have a moment of kind of remembering myself sitting where they were and listening to teachers. And now I was thinking, I'm the teacher they're listening to. And was just really, to quote Doctor Who, it was just wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey bits that really threw me. But I'm very happy and proud to be with RMIT again. I'm teaching writing fiction for young adults, a general writing fiction class, and then next semester I'm doing a towards publication class, which is people who are sort of finished with their manuscripts and want to know what to do next. So I'll be wearing both my author hat and my agent hat in that class. Have you ever had a writing-related disaster? What happened? Oh, gosh. It was more of a research disaster. For the year the maps changed, because there were various safe havens around Australia, I wanted to go and visit some of them, not just the one in Point Nepean near where I live, but I wanted to go to Singleton Safe Haven in New South Wales. So I was scheduled to get on a plane, and I swear I just popped to the loo for 2 minutes. When I came back, the plane had been boarded, it had taken off, it was gone. I'd heard one call, my name was never mentioned, so I missed that plane and I was stuck at the airport for about 4 hours waiting for the next plane that did eventually come. And then I did get to go to Singleton, and I was very lucky that I did. It very much aided my research for the year the maps changed, particularly the Singleton Public Library. I love public libraries anyway, but that library in particular really saved my book's research and really ensured that I had a book to write because I was given so much good stuff from my research there. But yeah, it was a research-related disaster, not a writing-related disaster. I haven't, spilled ink anywhere or anything like that. Gosh, who helped me? Probably Kate Stevens, my publisher at Hachette. Even though I'm an agent, I did a very bad thing where I hadn't yet finished the manuscript of the year the map changed, but I sent her about the first 20,000 words. I actually sent it to 2 publishers. Being an agent, I'm very lucky that I kind of know how publishers work behind the scenes, and I had an idea of 2 publishers that I'd really quite like to work with from different publishing houses. So I sent it to the 2 of them. It was only for the first 20,000 words. One of them came back, and I had the full synopsis, but one of them came back and said, the refugee stuff, take it out. Not really that interesting. Just have it be a family story. And I kind of went, not the publisher for me. Kate loved it and just could see what I was trying to do, had more faith in me than I had in myself probably. But then she said, can you send me the rest? And the rest was just a hodgepodge, really. So I said, can you give me like a month? But it was her at the other end of my email inbox saying, I love this. I see what you're trying to do, especially after a publisher had not seen what I was trying to do. Her belief in me and her saying that she really loved my voice, and that immediately after I sent it to her, I just trusted her and the response that she had to those first few pages. So she really got me across the line. And I think now I'm somebody who writes to please my publisher. I've got something new in the works, and as soon as I sent it to her, the early pages, as soon as she said, I can hear you, Danielle, like, it's so nice to be back in your voice, I kind of went, oh, thank you. I really do think I'm trying to get the pat on the head from Kate Stevens now because she's my litmus test, I think, for if I sound like myself, because I do a lot of reading out loud. It's one of the things that I tell my students when they're proofreading their work, especially for a copy edit, to make sure that you're getting the lines right. It's very hard copy editing or line editing, which is a line by line edit, making sure you're getting the point across, that you're writing as poetically as possible, that you're not repeating words, which I do. I repeat the word quietly often. And as soon as it's pointed out to me, as soon as my editor says, you've used the word quietly 5 times across 2 pages, Danielle, I do think, oh, let's raise the volume. I do like a line edit. I do like a copy edit. So I do a lot of reading out loud. And Murray hears that first. My little Jackshund. He's my little rescue dog, Jack Russell, crossed with a dachshund, and he gets the first read through probably. But then it's Kate Stevens, and then it's probably my mum, who's a very good proofreader, and will point out all of my mistakes. But then at the end she'll say, I cried, and I'll think, good, make mum cry. That's a good indicator that it's going well. I dread the first line, because I'm a writer that needs a really good first line in order to continue. And I know when I haven't got a good first line, and it haunts me and it mocks me. And I actually can't continue in the writing until I've got that first line. Once I've got the first line down, I can jump around in the writing process and I can write a scene I'm really excited for that might come in like chapter 10, midway through the book. But until I have that first line, I can't continue. It's just something about, it's maybe a little bit of, I don't know, I don't want to jinx myself or something. Like if I don't have a first line, maybe that means I don't have a book at all. So yeah, the first line of the year the maps changed, you know, maps lie, or at least they don't always tell the truth. They're kind of like us humans that way. That was my first line on day one of what would become a 5-year journey to writing that story. And the first line never changed in 5 years. It was the perfect first line. And it was probably the having of that first line that gave me the impetus to keep going. Because at some point you think, well, I can't waste that first line. I've got to write the rest of it now. I can't just let that first line die. I have to, you know, rise to the challenge of that opening line. Yeah, that's a good question. The year the maps changed, for instance, I really thought I was going to set that in Singleton in New South Wales, and that I was going to have a 17-year-old male protagonist initially. But when I tried to sit down and write that book, the voice didn't come to me. Nothing came to me. And it wasn't until I decided to tap into my own memories at that time, to set it on the Mornington Peninsula, which I was very scared to do because I thought, I know people who live here. What if I get it wrong? And then to make the character the same age I was in 1999, that was really scary because it was giving a lot of myself to the character. But until I'd done that, I didn't have a voice in my head. So I had to sort of put my heart on the page a little bit in order to do it. But for me, the decision of is it YA or middle grade, YA being 13 plus, middle grade being between 8 and 12. And I tend to write for the sort of sweet spot in between two of them most of the time, for middle grade being like 12 plus. And I know there's lots of 12, 13, 14-year-olds who've enjoyed the year the maps changed. The biggest question I ask myself, though, in terms of story, when I try to determine if it's for middle grade readers or YA, is really how important is family to the character? Because I think in middle grade, you still need your family, your core family, but in YA a little bit more, there's this thing that teenagers do where they can discover that they don't have to think the same way as their parents. They can break away a little bit more. They can start finding their found family of friends become more important to them. But for middle grade readers, I still think it's really important for the kids that age to have their core group of family, that is adopted family, which I love writing about. It's, you know, step parents as well. But that's still a really important call for that age group. But teenagers do the more hedging away to become themselves. So that's always the line I ask, is how important is family to this character? And then that sets me off on the journey, because once you ask yourself that question, a lot of things start unfolding. If you could go out for dinner with any writer, living or dead, who would you choose? I love and adore, and I call her Queen Melina Marchetta. So, and I have actually shared meals with Melina, and I know that she's lovely. I would probably choose Melina Marchetta just to get the goss on what's happening with the Jellicoe Road television/movie that I know she got some screen funding for, and I'd like a new update about that, please. I'd also like her to bring along whatever she's working on manuscript-wise, draft-wise, let me read it. So probably Melina Marchetta. If I could have dinner with a dead author, though, could be very stinky, but let's say it's a full reanimation. Oh my gosh, who would it be? I can only think of current authors who are midway through series and things that I'd want to ask some spoilers, like Diana Gabaldon. I'd want to ask about the Outlander series and see if she knows where it ends yet. Like, give us a hint. Can you introduce me to Katrina Balfe and Sam Hewen as well? That would be great. Bring them along to the dinner, Diana. So yeah, I can't think of any dead authors. I'm so sorry to the Grateful Dead. But yeah, Melina and Diana probably. I've got Jodie McAllister's Libby Lawrence is Great at Pretending. Is that the right title? If it's wrong, I'm so sorry. But Jodie McAllister, who I loved her Valentine fantasy paranormal romance series, and now she's done, it's kind of an adjacent story to the monster of her age almost, where I was writing about a family of filmic thespians. She's writing about, can I call them this? Yes, theatre geeks, because she was a theatre geek, and there's a beautiful thread of romance in there. So Jodie McAllister's new book, really, really excited by. She's so talented. And she's got another romance coming out in July as well that I'm so excited for. So she's just very, very talented, and I'm really enjoying her YA novel right now. And then for the middle grade side of things, Fiona Wood's new middle grade novel, I think it's How to Spell Catastrophe, which touches on school strike for climate students and how students in the middle grade age are coping with their real fear around climate change and climate disaster. Fiona Wood is an automatic buy author for me. So, of course, she's doing this brilliantly as well. So both of them are just very intimidating for how good they are, but also very enjoyable for how good their books are. What's next for me? Kate Stevens, the person who is my litmus test of, is this any good? I've sent her the first few pages of a new middle grade novel, which will be for the same age range as The Year the Maps Changed. It's tentatively called The 6 Summers of Tash and Leopold. And hear me out for a second. It's set in Melbourne during lockdown, but it's not about COVID or the pandemic. It is 2 kids who've always lived on the same street and have attended the same school, joined forces to try and uncover a missing person / murder mystery in their suburb. So it's a middle grade mystery where they're focusing on this to not focus on what's happening outside in the real world. I'm very inspired by the American middle grade author Gary D. Schmidt, who often writes these really beautiful middle grade books, say in the 70s in particular, where the kids are focused on one thing and in the background it's like the Vietnam War or the assassination of Bobby Kennedy, and that's happening. But as is real in life, the kids aren't focused on that. They're not watching the news or listening to the radio about it constantly. They have other bigger things on their mind. So yes, it's a lockdown murder mystery between 2 middle grade kids. And there's also friendship and family complications in there. And I'm really loving writing that at the moment. And it might be out next year. We'll see. We shall see. And then a second standalone middle grade novel, but with a teenage stepsister in there as well. So it could be the meeting of my 2 worlds of YA and middle grade. And this one's going to be a contemporary road trip novel. But a big theme or fixation for the protagonist is the sinking of the Titanic. So I'm going to find a way to weave that into the story. And if it sounds like it would be really hard to do that, it is. That's going to be the joy of reading and writing it, I think. So yeah, TBD, 2 books to come, both in middle grade. But the second one might have some wonderful banter between a teenager and a middle grade protagonist, which I'm really looking forward to writing. Thank you so much for having me, Leaf Bookshop. I'm very happy that I get to be part of this series now and go up on your wall of authors. I'm very honoured and delighted, so thank you.